Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for tuning in to the Pod and the Pendulum podcast. I'm your host, Mike Snoonian, joined once again by my co-host, Jerry Smith. Jerry, how are we doing today?
I am doing great. I'm very excited about this. What I love about this is, every other series that we've done, we've kind of done one episode on a movie and moved on. I love that with this one, this is now our third episode on the first movie,
Yep.
And rightfully so. I mean, when it comes to not just franchises, but horror films in general, I think this is definitely a movie that takes a lot of time as far as you need to devote time to talk about it. There's so much as far as history, mythology, and everything else. So I'm very excited about this.
I'm really happy because I can finally ask our guest today to reimburse me for a pair of underwear from 1999. But we are joined today by Eduardo Sanchez, co-director, co-writer of the Blair Witch Project, and we are thrilled to have him on today. So, Eduardo, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. And we do an audio podcast, so people can't see, but that is quite the office you have there, man.
I'm like in the middle of trying to get rid of some Star Wars crap I have. I have like so much, and it's gotten to the point where it's like hoarder kind of mentality. So I stopped kind of cold turkey a few months ago, and now I'm just organizing the stuff I have. It's daunting, man. I took it way too far.
You're in recovery now.
It's beautiful back there.
Yeah, I'm in definitely need some recovery on this.
I'm seeing that AT-AT Walker in the glass case back there, and I'm like, oh, would really like that right now.
Yeah, I've got a lot of crazy stuff, man.
Yeah. So we know we're a little bit pressed for time, so we're gonna dive right in if that's all right.
Yeah,
and for me, like I guess the best place to start at the beginning. What I love about the Blair Witch is how much it involves folklore. And I kind of wanted to know, and we asked Ben this a little bit too, were there any specific like folklore tales or, tales from your local area growing up that you heard that kind of informed the mythology you put together for the Blair Witch Project?
Ben, and Greg Hale, I think they did a lot of the mythology. I think Ben did most of it. And really, Dan and I, Dan Myrick, who co-directed and co-wrote the movie with me, really the only kind of thing that we had as like mythology that we were that was a good starting point was like the Salem witch trials. Like that for us was like, okay, imagine if there was like a smaller version of the Salem witch trials, in Maryland, in this town, Blair, and and that's how the mythology, began. And then other than that, it was mostly like, we told Ben, our kind of like marching orders for everybody was kind of like, keep it believable, keep it like, make it a story that seems like it could happen, but then again, it could be something where, some people just got lost in the woods, So all the mythology is kind of like, it's creepy and, and the whole idea that it happens around every 50 years or so. We wanted to keep that. But other than that, it was just kind of like, let's just make it as real as possible and kind of like hint at stuff that we've heard. But no, the legends around here are mostly like Civil War stuff. And none of it really fit to what we were doing. So we just kind of let Ben do his thing, and he came up with a nice mythology for us.
Okay, so he was like the driving force behind everything. A lot of the Rustin Parr and things of that nature. I take it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple of like once he kind of I don't know where. I mean, I know he came up with the name Rustin Parr, but I don't. But I think because our whole thing was like we had certain things that we were developing for the film, like events, and we knew we were going to end up in a house. So I'm not sure if like what we told Ben about Rustin Parr, whether we told him, hey, just somebody in the 40s was like this hermit who killed 7 kids or whatever. And then he came up with all the details. I'm not sure if Dan talked to him or whatever, but there had to have been some coordination because I know he didn't just come up with it and we, retrofit it into the film. I think I definitely think there was some kind of, order to it. But yeah, he definitely came up with all the details, and then later on, once we kind of came up with enough story to our background information to kind of give Heather and the guys like enough enough background information as to what they were out there searching for, or trying to do this film about. And obviously Heather knew all that we gave. We gave her all the information. And the guys, we didn't give any information to.
Okay.
We figured Heather would tell them on the way. So I'm not sure what the coordination was, but I know that we had this idea of like this house ending up in the end, and so there must have been some coordination with the whole Rustin Parr story. But other than that, it was just kind of come up with some creepy stories that are believable.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions about the film is that it was just thrown together. I mean, even in researching, I mean, the mythology, the planning, everything, even as far as casting, didn't you guys like audition like 2,000 people or something like that before deciding on those three?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably around 1,000 people, but yeah, we auditioned a lot of people, mostly out of New York City, and then we went to, we did some here in DC, we did some in California and Orlando, but really the major talent was out of New York City, and yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, we knew that we were going to improv most of the film. So, probably all of the film. I mean, I think the way we were going to do it was kind of leave the actors out there for a few hours at a time to do certain scenes, and then we would go back and check out the footage, and then that was the initial plan. So it was we needed like a really a special kind of actor.
When did you decide that instead of like shooting a few scenes and then looking back at it and then going back out, when did you decide we're going to scrap that and basically do psychological warfare on our trio for a week?
I mean, we were gonna do it anyway. I mean, they even the auditions, we knew, they knew that we were gonna do some stuff to them. I mean, because that was kind of the story of the movie, especially at night. But Greg Hale, our producer, I'm not sure when the idea came, but it was closer to like the production of the movie in '97, and he said, he was like, hey, why don't we just leave them out there? And Dan and I were like, what? He was like, yeah, why don't we just leave the actors out there and we give them, coordinates through a GPS. We buy a couple of GPS little machines, and we send them out there with coordinates. And as soon as Dan and I heard that, our whole thing was like, okay, how do you keep control of your story? How do you keep control of your film that way? But the more we thought about it, the more we realized that really it was going to work really well, because what were we going to do? Like bring them out of the woods every night and have them sleep in the hotel? I mean, that was definitely not what we were going to do. So we just started thinking in that way of like, how do we direct them, and how do we give them the information we need or they need without like with minimal contact, because that was kind of the big thing. Like, let's try to not talk to them, as little, communicate with them as little as possible, just to kind of keep them isolated out there. So, it was definitely Greg Hale's idea. And then I think Dan and I just kind of realized, yeah, I mean, if we can pull this off, I think it's the best way to do it. And then it was just a matter of like, how do we pull it off, and how do we, not freak out the actors, and not, kill them, not make sure that they don't get hurt. And then Greg kind of came up, because Greg had like a lot of he went through special forces training, and he knew they did like these scenarios where they would like throw the like a little squad out into the middle of the woods, and they would be kind of alone for like 3 days, and I think they used GPS for that. So he kind of had an idea of like, I think we can, of how we did it, how we could do it, and luckily he was there to kind of guide us and kind of give us the kind of the rules of engagement, and also and the idea of like making sure that the actors were you know, within walkie-talkie distance of us, you know, at all times.
Right.
You know, because that was our main thing. Like, we don't want, you know, we don't want, you know, we don't really want to kill these people. You know, we don't really want to hurt them. So that was a big thing for us, you know, just make sure that they're, and obviously we ran it by the actors, and they were like totally like, yeah,
Sure.
let's do it, you know.
So how nerve-wracking was it for you as the director to not have that kind of oversight, immediate oversight of the film, where you really entrusted Josh, Mike, and Heather with your film? Not just what they said, but what they saw. How nerve-wracking was that for you?
It was, I mean, you know, I mean, it was a full, the whole movie was an experiment. And I think, you know, Dan and I always, the original idea for the movie, though, it was going to be a true documentary. It was going to have, you know, footage of the, you know, the filmmakers lost in the woods, and then we were going to cut away to interviews. And so I think that Dan and I were like, you know, this might not be the ideal way to like keep control of the, you know, of the story and like really kind of like micromanage, you know, a set, you know what I mean? But I think we're gonna have enough footage, and then we can kind of, you know, if it doesn't come out exactly the way we want it, we always have the documentary to kind of fill in the space. And so we, you know, so we felt like even if they screw up, you know, even if we screw up 50% of the footage, we're still going to have more than enough to work in this documentary.
Is that where the phase 1 and phase 2 aspects came into it?
That's what. Yeah, phase 1 was in the woods, you know, the 3 filmmakers, and then phase 2 was all the documentary stuff that mostly ended up on Curse of the Blair Witch. So, you know, I mean, it was definitely nerve-wracking, but I think that if we had, you know, if somebody had told us, hey, all this documentary stuff you're going to shoot for phase 2, you're not going to use it in the movie. Like, if somebody had gone into the future and told us that, I think Dan and I would have freaked out a little more and probably, you know, micromanaged the shoot more, which would have been a complete detriment to the, you know, the production. I think if we were like, all right, you got to come up with like, you know, 80, 85, 90 minutes of footage from this thing, I think we would have been like, oh my God, we have to direct them more, you know, carefully, and kind of do it a little bit more, you know, a little more normal, you know, not such an experiment. So it was good that we kind of came up with that decision, you know, that we cut all the phase 2 stuff much later in the process, because, you know, I think it would have been a different story, you know, if we had that much footage to shoot. We knew we had that much footage to shoot. We didn't have that safety net of phase 2. I think it would have been a different story for sure.
I do have to ask, whose idea was it to use the code word taco?
I think that was all Greg. I think, you know, Dan and I were basically, you know, once prep began, you know, Ben was mostly in the house, you know, at the Rustin Parr house, you know, clearing the graffiti, and him and Rick Marino, the art director, were out there a lot and just kind of, you know, there were some holes in the floor, of course. The steps going down to the cellar were, you know, we had to put new steps in there, you know, just kind of make it at least safe, halfway safe for, you know, for us to be in there. So that was Ben's big thing. And then Dan and I just basically walked through Seneca Creek State Park, which is where we shot the movie, and we came up with the GPS coordinates. Like, we were like, okay, this is where Coffin Rock is going to be, and this is where they're going to cross the log. Here's this log that they have to cross, and here's the you know. So we would enter all the GPS coordinates and keep track of where they were, and then everything else pretty much Greg did, like on the logistical side, like figuring out, you know, the code words, kind of laying it all out for the actors so they knew, you know, what was going on, figuring out like where to put the base camps, you know, so that we were close enough to them, but we weren't, you know, too close to them.
Was it Greg's idea?
Greg.
Was it Greg's idea to kind of do the give them, you know, less and less food each day, you know, kind of that thing, or was that something everyone kind of came up with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of something that, you know, we played it, you know, once we realized, okay, this is going to be a 7 or 8 day play, basically, in the woods. I think at that point we started kind of making all the notes of like, okay, let's start taking, you know, start giving them less food, Let's, kind of mapping out everything that happened when, Josh was going to leave the movie, when he was going to be taken out. All that stuff kind of came when we realized that we were going to be in the woods for 8 days. And then Dan and I kind of took the script and kind of broke it up and kind of planned it out, like how are we going to lay it out in this, this 2 square mile area that the park was in. Just to keep them walking and stuff. So that was, all the logistical stuff was mostly Greg. I mean, Dan and I were just in the woods kind of walking around and getting lost most of the time.
Was there ever a moment where you kind of felt like maybe the improv would get a little too crazy? I mean, with Heather and especially, I mean,
Heather
it gets
Josh
pretty
in
intense.
particular.
Yeah. I mean, very early on, there was a incident where Heather, where Mike and Josh reached out to Ben, who Ben I think was delivering stuff to them, and they were like, "Hey, we need to talk to Ed or Dan or whatever." So I went out there. Ben came back and said they want to talk to you. So I went out there and Mike and Josh felt that the night before Heather had character-wise had gotten to the point where like, that Mike and Josh would just leave. That's like, she was really mistreating them, like really being abusive. And so we looked at the footage and we were like, yeah, it's, it was the first night that they heard noises. So we were like, man, she's already at like DEFCON, she's already at 11, so we realized, okay, this is going to keep building. So we need to bring her down. So, and Mike and Josh were actually, were kind of like, look, as characters, if somebody had treated us that way, we would leave. I mean, this is, we're the ones doing her a favor. She's not paying us. We're here, to shoot her film. There's no way that she should treat us this way. So I talked to Heather and I said, look, let's scale it back a little bit. That we still have, 4 or 5 days of, horror coming your way. So we have to slowly build it up. And if you start, all the way at the maximum, we're not going to be able to, you're not going to have anywhere to go, and also I was like, and you also, you're a filmmaker. You have to, you're the leader, you're the director. You can't, don't abuse don't think you can abuse your crew. You know what I mean? Like, that's like the first rule of especially when you're not paying people. It's like, don't be nice, be cool to your crew,
Well, I think that's also a part of the actual film that works and makes it feel even more human. There is that kind of aspect of Heather just kind of blowing up at people, but then and now after you say that, it makes perfect sense. But then after that, there's these quiet moments where she's actually trying to comfort them and get closer to them.
Yeah,
so, that definitely works.
And you could see that, like she really, and I talked to Heather and she was like, yeah, you're right. I'm totally on board with it. And you could see kind of her being a little more, friendly and a little more, just kind of, not being so harsh with them. But the thing that happened was that when we got the footage back, you were asking a question like, what do you think the improv? Did I ever have a moment where the improv wasn't, we didn't think it was going to work? I mean, we knew it was going to work. We just didn't know how much of it was going to work. We didn't know if we were going to, and again, we were only looking for maybe half an hour of footage, maybe 40 minutes of footage. The rest of it was going to be documentary. So we weren't super worried about it. But Dan and I did have to go through and just kind of cut out all, I mean, I know they argue a lot, but if you watch the raw footage, they are arguing 80% of the time. I mean, it's literally hours and hours of arguing. So we kind of just edited, kind of selectively edited the scenes and said, all right, she's being a little too harsh here, or Josh is being a little too harsh, or Mike is being too much of an asshole. And, and slowly, because really the movie was born in the editing room, you know what I mean? So slowly kind of sculpted the storyline. And also was kind of an interesting thing is that originally Mike was going to be pulled out. Like in
that's my question. Yep.
In all the auditions or the callbacks that we did, because we did the scene where Josh is yelling at them from the woods and they don't know where he is, and it was always the sound guy. It was always the sound guy that got taken out. So Dan and Mike was supposed to be the one that was being, pulled out even while we were in production. And then Dan and I started looking at the footage, and we realized that Josh and Heather were really kind of butting heads, like a lot more than her and Mike. And Mike was also butting heads, but her and Josh were really butting heads. And we were like, if we pull Josh out, there's going to be like this different kind of tone. We felt like just. So we decided at the last minute to pull Josh out. So then in the edit, we kind of had to go back and make sculpt it, like, again, kind of edit it so that it made sense when Josh left. Like there was kind of we kind of did, we built Josh's arc, really concentrated on it before we pulled him out. You know what I mean? But it was good. But I think that there's so much footage. I think that you could do like a lot of you could definitely do like a 3-hour version of the movie. I don't know if I would sit with it through it, but there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of really great scenes that that we just had to cut out. I mean, there's a scene like after she finds the stick bundles, the bundle of sticks with Josh's teeth in them, in it. Where it's like, it's near the end of the movie. They're like hungry. They're just lost. It's kind of hopeless for them. And Mike like kind of lost it. Like he was like, you only see the end of it. Like when he's rocking on that little stump, you only see the end of it, but there's this whole like 20-minute breakdown of him yelling and punching trees and like really, really like kind of like nutty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we just didn't have time for it. We just like, we can't devote this much time to it at this point in the movie. So there's a lot of really cool little moments that, never made it in. So most of the movie like really was directed, I think, with Dan and I kind of editing, separately, sometimes together, and just kind of, making the footage work.
So one of the things I love about the movie is that we talked about this and we compared it to, say, Halloween, where Halloween, Friday the 13th, they put you in the point of the view of the killer, and with those first-person shots, and that's who, as an audience, you empathize with and cheer for after a while. This movie, the whole movie's from the point of view mostly of Heather, but also Mike and Josh. Now, like, when Heather's getting screamed at, I'm getting screamed at as an audience member.
Yeah.
And not only that, but when they're peering into the woods and they cannot see anything, I cannot see anything. Yeah. And it really changed the way I felt as an audience member. Like it ratcheted up that terror, even without just creating images in my head.
Yeah.
What sort of temptation was there to add more? To say, like, we need to show something, and when did you decide, no, like, what we're creating, looking at our footage, is 100 times scarier than any sort of bogeyman we can put on the screen?
Yeah, I mean, the original idea of Blair Witch was, Dan and I, in like 90 or 91, we were in film school, and we started watching horror movies, renting movies from our childhood, and we rented like a bunch of In Search of episodes and Legend of Boggy Creek, and all those kind of pseudo documentaries. And so, and our whole thing was like, what makes these things so scary is that they're, it's reality. Like they're telling you that this is real. They're just like, it's a documentary. It's supposed to be completely real. And so the original idea was like, these people go into the woods, and we had very little, as far as story that first weekend, but we did have this scene where it's like, the camera goes into you see this house, this creepy, dilapidated house, and the camera goes in, and the audience, there's no escape for the audience, because the audience knows, oh shit, we're going into that house. We were going into that house, and there's no alternate view. There's no like sunset shot. There's no, you're with the characters the whole time. There's no POV of the killer. There's no wide shot of them approaching the house. There's nothing to separate you, from what the characters are going through. And we felt like that kind of POV camera, with just like what the hell's going, happening around the corner, what's going on down that, going down a hall and seeing this creepy door and seeing, the first ideas were like pentagrams and like, there's like bits of sacrifice have happened in this house, and you're going down into this cellar, and you're going down, and then the light of the camera is all the only light you see. So that was, to us, like that was Blair Witch. Like that was the idea that we were trying to convey. And then the documentary stuff would be more of like, okay, let's give the audience a little relief to come back and see, like, Heather's mom and Heather's boyfriend and Mike's, girlfriend and the detective and all that stuff. But then once we started editing the movie, and especially once we decided to remove all the phase 2 stuff, we realized that, like, you're stuck with them the whole time. And we thought that was going to create something unique, for the audience, because there is no relief, there is no relief in Blair Witch. I mean, I know that, some people wish there was relief, but no, there was no relief. Like the shaky, the sensibility of the footage. They're walking around. They don't have they can't afford a steady cam. It's going to be shaky. And of course, we never thought, we're like, these, on video, people will be able to handle the shakiness, because I have bad motion sickness. So, like every time I watch Blair Witch, I have to sit all the way in the back of the theater. So, that was just it. So everything was, all the decisions in the movie were based on like how, like what would Heather really shoot? What would these guys really record on audio? What would it really look like? What would it really sound like? That's why we decided to go with no music. That's why we decided that, there was not going to be any like, fill light and then at night, you know what I mean? There's no fake illumination in Blair Witch. It's just the light on the camera and flashlights, So that everything was based on like, okay, what would really happen? And we tried, I think that as far as like showing stuff, I think by the end of the movie, if somebody had said, hey, here's $50,000 and here's, a couple of really talented effects artists on making a witch or making, some creepy, but since we didn't have any money, we just had to kind of come up with that ending. And so show at the end, like, how do you end Blair Witch Project?
Right.
Yeah.
It was a huge challenge. So, at the end we were like, okay, let's just do this. And then, if we have to, we can reshoot it. If it doesn't work, whatever. But that was the idea we had, like, Mike standing in the corner and not turning around. Like, why wouldn't he turn around to say, to talk to Heather? What, I'm saying, like, why would he not acknowledge Heather screaming her lungs out behind him?
Yeah.
So for us was like enough, of a creepy moment to kind of end the film. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of temptation to like not show stuff or like to show little, as little as possible. But I think it was mostly done because we had we have very limited resources.
Sure.
Well, I think that's what works best for the film and most horror films. I mean, I think Jaws is scariest when you don't see the shark, that opening scene and stuff like that. I think when films kind of show too much, they kind of lose that sense of suspense and stuff.
Absolutely. Or when like a creature is shown too early.
Yeah.
I think there are some movies where that works because it's just a different kind of thing. But like something like this, where it's supposed to be creepy, or like Jaws, the Jaws model works really well. You know what I mean? The idea of like slowly revealing the creature and then the end giving the audience what they want. And for us, we couldn't afford to give the audience what they want, what they expected, because you expected to see some creature at the end. I mean, that's just the way, it is. Bad, CG or some bad, guy in a suit or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
There's another show, I think it was The Horror Virgin, that said, like, what if there was like a pair of feet floating above the camera, like a pair of hairy feet or something, like that's all you would see, like elevated.
Yeah,
that would be neat.
Yeah, no, I mean, the closest we came to like doing something physical was, when Heather's camera fell. We were thinking of like, imagine if you hear footsteps, and then you see like a hoofed leg come in front of the camera and then
Right.
pick the camera up, so you see this like, what the hell, like a hairy, like a horse leg, you know what I mean? That was that was as close as we came to like actually showing. But yeah, I mean, there was. I mean, I think you could have definitely come up with some cool stuff. It was just kind of like at the we were running out of time and we were already shooting. We didn't have an ending, so it was kind of like, let's just do this and then we can come back and shoot something different if we need to.
Right. Well, I think it still works really well. I think that for audience members that paid attention and like remembered what's going on earlier in the movie, it's a perfect ending. And even if you like have a short attention span and don't remember what happened an hour ago, it's still, like you said, like, why is this dude just standing in the corner while someone else is screaming? Like that, and I've said this when we did the show, like, if you ever want to creep someone out, go in a basement and just stand in the corner and don't move.
Yeah.
Even if you've never seen this movie, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
So I think where a lot of films that were definitely inspired by your film kind of went wrong is there was never a justification or there was never anything that warranted still filming stuff. And I think that's the quickest way for me as a viewer to be like, okay, well, why are you still filming things? Like there's no point. Whereas your film, I mean, everything feels warranted. Did you ever were you ever concerned about like maybe like pulling that back or
I think as far as like the main problem that Dan and I and Greg, because Greg was very much involved in he was almost like a third director. The biggest thing we were concerned with was like, why are they still shooting? Like, why the hell would you still be shooting? So that's why there was, and we did it a lot and we cut it, but we really wanted to make that, to give them a reason to keep shooting, you know what I mean? And I think what we eventually figured out was that, Heather's just doing it to like keep her sanity, and Josh, I think, has a great little scene where he's shooting Heather and he goes, hey, I see why you like shooting. It's kind of a filtered reality. And we completely knew that that's exactly what we were looking for, what we were trying to do. But at the same time, there's a lot of notes where we were like, like Mike is always like, Mike and Josh like, turn the camera off, like, to me, that was a natural thing. Like after a while, you'd be like, dude, turn that camera off. I'm going to punch you in the face. You know what I mean? Like, enough of this. You know what I mean? So we were very much aware of it. And we just we wanted to make sure that we reminded the audience, every, few minutes or every act or every, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, we constantly wanted to kind of remind them why they were still shooting. And then at the end, I think it kind of, it's a necessity of found footage movies. If you turn the footage off, your movie ends. But so we were definitely concerned about that, and we just felt like, all right, look, if people are worried about this, then the whole movie's not going to work, and there's nothing really we can do to that's going to fix this, other than just kind of talk about it amongst the characters and really explain why they're still shooting, and then also and then we kind of worked it into the directing notes. I'm pretty sure where it was like Heather's like, we told Heather like, the shooting is the only thing that's keeping you sane.
Yeah, I think that's the best line in the entire film.
You have to keep the camera rolling. You have to, and then for us, like for other directing notes for Mike or Josh, we're like, you got to get Heather to stop shooting everything. Like this is a major thing. Like you are just tired of her shooting, pointing that video camera at you. So that's kind of the tension that we played, and luckily, our actors were, so good and like, just really, really brought everything that Dan and I kind of had, formulated in the script. They brought it to life, and just in a really marvelous way.
Well, I think that makes it work so well is you obviously thought about that. You didn't just discard it and play down thinking your audience would be dumb. You worked it into Heather saying that. Or, I mean, even your segment in VHS, too. There's very much a reason for that to be filmed. It's a GoPro on his head. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think, found footage, has evolved, you know what I mean? And I think that it's more of like, it's more accepted now. But yeah, back in that time period, that was our biggest concern, is the idea, like, is it ridiculous that they're still shooting? Like, is it like, why would they still be shooting? You know what I mean? Like, or like, like there's a moment in Cloverfield where I'm like, dude, I would have just thrown that camera at the creature and run the other way. You know what I mean? But obviously, you don't have a movie if the cameraman throws the camera away. So, it works better in some way. Not that threw me out of the movie completely, but in all found footage movies, there's always a moment of like, okay, why
are we doing this?
Why are they still shooting this? Why are they, and hopefully the story and the acting and what's happening on screen will keep will gives you enough to kind of ignore that. But yeah, it is a big problem with found footage movies for sure.
So was there any point in filming where you just kind of thought to yourself, we have something special here?
When we reviewed the footage, I mean, look, all the footage was good, but we couldn't review all of it. They were shooting way more than we could review. So we would watch. Dan and I would sit and watch for a little while, and then we would have to go and do some stuff in the woods, or do directing notes or whatever. There was always something to do. So, we knew that it was working. We're like, yeah, it's believable. Yeah, you can, it's cool. The dialogue is good. And we gave Heather some pointers, like when you're walking with the camera, zoom out all the way. Do not zoom in unless you're like really stationary, because it's just, it's worthless if you're walking with the camera zoomed in. And the same thing with Mike, just kind of audio pointers. I forgot the question. What was the question?
When you knew that you had what was the point where you said, like, you know what, we have something here that is better than
when we sat down and we watched the map scene where Mike admits that he kicked the mic in the creek, because that was not scripted. That was like one of the moments that was complete improv. That was like Mike Williams just, happened to kick the creek, the map in the creek, and he thought that Heather and Josh were going to be like, "What are you doing?" And nobody saw it, so he was
like,
"Yeah, nobody saw it." So he was like, "All right, what do I do here?" And I'm not sure if he told us that or he did it on his own, but I just know that when Dan and I watched that scene, we were like, our jaws were, we were like as much into the movie as any audience member could be, and we were shooting the movie. We were like the directors of this damn thing, So at that moment, we realized, wow, that scene is really powerful, and like that's something that we didn't even think of. So for us, it was like that was our first taste of like of a completely new scene in our own movie. You know what I mean? Because the rest of it, I mean, the dialogue and everything was all improv, but the story was, they were following the story that Dan and I were, had laid out months before. So that was like on, in the townhouse that we were living in, that we were using as a production office. We, watching the tapes. That was the moment where kind of Dan and I think Greg was probably there too. We kind of looked at each other and we're like, all right, I think we might have something here. So that was it. That was just pivotal, for us.
And then how did you come to decide to lean heavily into the audience suspension of disbelief, not only with the movie itself, but all of the paraphernalia surrounding it, whether it's Curse of the Blair Witch, the website, the wanted posters, actually the missing posters. When did you decide, like, we're not going to tell people it's real, but if they want to believe that, we're not going to necessarily dispel them of that notion either?
Yeah. I mean, we early on, we kind of made a point of like not having of telling people that it wasn't real. Like, we never imagined that we were going to market the movie as a real movie. Like, we felt that was either going to be illegal or it was going to get us in trouble in some way. And we were also like,
so snuff films are illegal, is what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Or the idea that like, you're marketing something that isn't real, but you're saying it's real.
Okay.
Like we were worried about, because even in like when I was young, there was a movie called Faces of Death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That, it was like a VHS that was going around. And when, everybody's like, oh, it's real. And when I watched it, the only thing I was thinking about was trying to disprove it, like trying to look at, oh, that's fake, and there's a cut there, and this, whatever. So I went into it with a completely bad attitude. So, and I think, so Dan and I, and Greg, when we were editing the movie, we were like, look, we can't release this as a hoax because people are going to be pissed off and there's going to be a major backlash. So we decided that, we were going to tell everybody, but that didn't like stop us from like creating like a world, or a real feeling world around this movie, So, and like on the website, like I did the original website before Artisan took over, and everything was real. Like everything was like, these people just disappeared in the woods. The police investigated the footage. They didn't find any evidence of foul play. I mean, what are they going to do with that footage? You can't arrest anybody. So they gave it back to Heather's mom because that footage would belong to her legally. Heather's mom hired Hacks and Films to do a documentary about the footage. So that was the thing. That was like a timeline. This is what we're doing, and this is some shots from the footage, and this is the mythology of the Blair Witch. This is Heather Donahue's journal. This is that, whatever. But if you really dug down deep into the website, you saw that there was producers and writer-directors, and the movie was being made in a conventional way. So we never pretended, or we never lied to anybody. We never somebody said, "Is this real?" We said, "Oh yeah, it's real." We never did that. And then once Artisan bought the movie, they John Hageman, who was the head of marketing over there, was like, "Hey, we're gonna market this as real. We're gonna keep the actors out of the spotlight for about the first week or two. Only you and Dan are gonna be doing press." And we told them, we're like, "Look, you guys do what you want. Obviously you guys know better than us. But we're not gonna lie to any press. We're not gonna say, oh yeah, it's real, whatever. We're just gonna go and and do the interview like it was a normal film." And they were like, no, that's cool. That's fine. We don't expect you guys to lie. So, it was completely their thing. You know what I mean? And then for us, it was just like, at least all the stuff that kind of, the website was for us like a marketing tool. It was like, how do we get the word out? We have no money. We can't we can't do any direct mailings. We have nothing. We can afford a website, maybe $15 a month to host a website. And luckily, I had built some websites previously, so I built this very simple website, and it was just pure marketing. And then, at least far as Curse of the Blair Witch, Artisan, look, the thing about Blair Witch and the whole marketing was that we definitely were instrumental in kind of like the idea of the marketing and kind of a lot of the stuff that kind of came into play in the marketing. But Artisan, like John Hageman and Amaret Jones and all the people over there in the marketing department, they were totally open to just kind of breaking the rules. You know what I mean? So, we had made all this stuff. Like we had made the missing poster, because we had a scene in phase 2 where you see Heather's mom, putting these these missing posters up around Burkittsville, because that's what mom would do. You know what I mean? That's what you would do. So that missing poster was already done, and when Artisan saw it, they're like, "Holy shit, we can do this! We can put this up at Cannes, and we can put it up here and there, whatever." So, and then Curse of the Blair Witch was kind of like, look, they came to us and they were like, "Hey, we made a deal with Sci-Fi Channel, and we can do like a 1-hour special on Blair Witch. Do you guys have any ideas for something we could do?" And we were like, "We know exactly. We can take this footage that we didn't use, and we can make a real documentary about the mythology and about this missing footage." So it was very much like, it was very a natural flow of ideas between us and Artisan, and even the trailers. We had no idea what kind of trailer to do for this movie. Yeah. Like how do you? And then they sent us, first cuts of the trailer, and we were like, "That's how you do it. You just kind of make it. You don't do a conventional trailer. You just throw these things out there and kind of freak people out and make people wonder like, what the hell is this? Like that's really what you want people to. That's really what those trailers did." So they were really, really good, and Artisan was the perfect company to buy Blair Witch for sure. I mean, nobody else. I don't think anybody else would have done what they did. Blair Witch would have not done. I think if Miramax had bought it or any, because I think that they just weren't. Artisan was kind of like this. They were small enough, but they had enough resources to do kind of bigger things, but they were small enough to kind of take risks. So they just rolled the dice, man, and it paid off for them.
I think it was a time where you could take risks too. Like we're so at that point maybe little invested in it overall that you're like, why not see what we can throw at the wall?
Yeah, I mean, they bought the movie for a pretty low amount for advance, a lot for us, and then they were using they released Pi the year before, and they had done a really great job with it, and I think they were just kind of like this kind of they really loved like this guerrilla kind of marketing, and they felt that Blair Witch was like the perfect movie to do it for. So it was a really good partnership, man.
Okay. I wanted to ask about probably the most iconic scene in the movie, which is Heather's like video confession at the end. Yeah. And I just was that's like it was obviously lampooned mercilessly in the years that followed, which is unfortunate. But I think it's what people remember the most from the movie. What sort of direction was she given in order to create that? And when did you know? And was it what you envisioned, or is what ended up happening just like above and beyond what you kind of expected when you envisioned that moment?
I mean, I think, Dan and I knew that it was going to be, that if we cast the right people, that there were certain scenes that were going to be, pivotal, that were going to be like, really, really remembered, and we knew, and the whole idea of like pointing a camera at yourself and like basically, your last will and testament, basically, because you're going to die. I mean, that's a powerful, that's a powerful scene. We knew that was going to be a powerful scene, and actually, we had Mike do one too. Like Mike does a little confessional, because we wanted to, we wanted both of them to realize that they were not going to get out of the woods, and we loved the idea of like, okay, what's Heather going to do now that we've told her that she's not getting out of these woods, So the direction was, find a place where you can go where Mike is not gonna, where Mike is asleep or Mike is in the tent or whatever. Tell him that you want to go out alone, and just go off into the woods and point the camera at yourself and just give us. This is the last thing that people are gonna see from you. Like this is you have to say goodbye to everybody. You have to apologize. You have to tell people you love them. Like this is your last, this is the last 10 minutes of that people are going to see of your life. And we just left it at that, man, because we knew she was going to, go somewhere, special. And again, it's one of those scenes, just like the kicking the map into the woods, into the river scene, into the creek scene, just like floored us, and it's, obviously it's a lot longer in the cut in the raw footage, but it was just like, we couldn't believe that, I mean, we knew that Heather was special, like when we saw her in the auditions, and the reason she got the part was that she had this, we thought that she, even in the audition space in New York City, she was able to hint at like psychosis. Like she was like, there was something in her face where you're like, holy crap, is she really losing it? So, and she wasn't, she was just acting. That's just, she's just very talented. So we knew that Heather was going to, deliver something special for us, but we didn't know that was going to be it. We didn't know that there was going to be snot and that she was just going to keep this camera pointed at herself. I mean, like, to me, is like, I've talked about this before. It's like, it's like, what other actress would do that?
Yeah.
I mean, like, even a normal movie, like, there's very few performances that have ever been that raw, I mean? And unfortunately, I mean, I think they you know, I think they did get some, you know, they obviously got notoriety because of, you know, Blair Witch, but I don't think the actors ever got like the credit that they really deserve for, like, you know, them, because, you know, and I know horror movies, it's very hard to get like Oscar nominations and stuff. It's almost impossible. But I mean, you know, like I think Gwyneth Paltrow won the Oscar that year for, you
Shakespeare in Love.
know, like
Yeah.
I put Heather's performance next to that, any of those
Any
performances,
day.
any day. You know, and if you really want to, and you know, you put, you know, not saying that, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow didn't do an amazing job in Shakespeare in Love. Of course she did. You put that movie up against Blair Witch, and you say, all right, who is acting? Who's giving you a more, like, who's acting better? Like, just generally speaking, I mean, I think,
Hmm.
I don't know, you know, I think that a lot of people would choose Heather, you know,
Right.
but you know, but so you know, so we knew that there was that it was going to be special.
Okay.
But we didn't know exactly how incredible it was going to be until we watched it.
You know, after the movie comes out, it's tremendously successful. I think the obvious answer, like how surprised were you with how well it did, is very surprised. You know, like, oh no, we knew it all along.
Yeah.
Did the success of the movie ever become overwhelming to you at all?
Yes, and it's still sometimes overwhelming. Like because like you know, because you have to kind of and it's really difficult to talk without like sounding like arrogant or, you know, full of yourself. But like, you know, we made this movie, you know, for $25,000 or whatever. You know, the early part of the first part of it, the phase one. And, you know, we were just like, man, I hope we can get a video deal out of this. You know, we knew it was a good idea, but we were like, you know, this movie's not going to play in theaters, and this movie's not going to do this, and this movie's not. I mean, you know, it can. Nobody's ever done a theatrical movie on high eight. You know, high eight video. You know what I mean? Like, just the technical aspects of it are, you know, we can't show this in a movie theater. Nobody will show it. You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to show it? From that to, like, you know, just all the interest we got from the website, and then, like, you know, getting into Sundance, and then it's selling immediately at Sundance, and then, like, you know, the kind of the craziness that the website created up to the, you know, to the release, and then Curse of the Blair Witch, and then, like, the idea that, like, our movie was like competing with, you know, Julia Roberts' movie. You know what I mean? Like, you know, because we early on we were like a friend of ours called us from LA, and she was like, you know that your movie's tracking better than, like, there was like a shark movie that came out that year with anyway, it was like
Deep Blue Sea, or
Deep Blue Sea. It's like, you know that your movie's tracking better than Deep Blue Sea. You know, like it's tracking better than The Haunted. Like, it's tracking better than, like, all these, like, people know about your movie, like, somehow, because, you know, that's how they that's how they kind of test how big, you know, how much money to spend is, like, you know, what's the word of mouth, and, you know, obviously all this market research that they do. And then, you know, the movie comes out, and, you know, we're on the cover of Time magazine, and we're, like, in Mad magazine, which was, to me, like, the ultimate, you know, the ultimate thing is to have you know, us in Mad magazine. I thought that was cool, the parody, and then all the parodies, and all the, you know, people are making fun of it and making, like, little tributes to it and all this stuff. Like, it just became overwhelming, because we were like, this movie's getting way too big for what it is. You know, it's just a little experimental movie, you know. And and then, you know, after a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks of release, you started seeing kind of the backlash where people were kind of expecting, I'm not sure what they were, you know, they were expecting, like, a more conventional horror movie. And obviously Blair Witch was not a conventional horror movie. So, so, you know, there was a fear of, like, okay, what are people really going to think about this? And then the, you know, the overwhelming part of, like, okay, now we're going to have to make another movie eventually, and we're going to have to, like, have this as, you know, this is always going to be, like, this big thing that happened in our careers, you know. So we were, you know, we were all grateful, and I feel always blessed to have been part of it, because it was a, you know, completely collaborative movie. But yeah, it was overwhelming, man. I mean, even now, like, there's just, like, you know, the interest in it is sometimes like too much. Like, it's just like, you don't and not that I tire of it, because I will, as long as people want to talk to me about this movie, I'll talk to them about it. But just the idea of like, man, people still want to talk about this movie. Like, people still are interested in, so I think it became overwhelming, a bunch of different times. And at times now, even now, 20 years later, it's still like, there's still this, it's a big ass shoes to fill.
Right. And your heart is in romantic comedies as well, correct? Like, deep down, you've wanted to make like romantic movies, if I remember.
Well, no, like deep. Well, romantic movies. We wanted to make after Blair Witch. We wanted to make like a romantic comedy, but just like really disgusting romantic, like how Fairley Brothers meets Monty Python. But no, I mean, for me, like when I, like you look at my film school movies and that, it's comedies and action movies. Like to me, an action comedy is really what where I thought my sweet spot was, and so it was kind of it was kind of crazy to think that something that was just that didn't really because both Dan and I were not horror guys. Like, we loved horror movies, like we loved Exorcist, but we also loved all the other genres. So we weren't like super horror guys that were like experts at all the horror movies. So there was like that was tough too, because it was like, all right, so now we gotta make horror movies, you know what I mean? So it took a while for us, at least for me, to kind of like clear the have enough space from Blair Witch to like really look back at horror movies and say, okay, yeah, I can make horror movies, and I think I know, I can learn to make them, and I kind of went to school and like because I had never really actively like studied horror, you know what I mean?
Did you ever feel like a sense of ownership when it came down to it, and you guys wanted Blair Witch to be able to breathe for a while before even thinking about doing a sequel? And then Artisan, did Book of Shadows, or like Winger did, the 2016 film. Do you ever feel kind of a sense of ownership to where you feel like, hey, that's kind of my baby? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, it's like when we watched Blair Witch, the 2016 version, that was like the most difficult part of the movie, because I really liked the movie. I thought it was, really creepy and like just really intense. But that was the most difficult part, is the idea of like, especially after so many years, because Book of Shadows came in right after Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And really, like, for me, Book of Shadows is kind of like a cousin of Blair Witch. You know what I mean? It's not really an offspring of Blair Witch, where I think the 2016 version, even though it does share like a similar storyline, to me, that's the first true sequel. You know what I mean? So it's weird. It's weird. I mean, even like I went, like, the Blair Witch video game that just came out, like, it's cool to me. Like, it's really cool that, oh my God, the idea that we had so long ago, people are still like, living in it and still developing ideas and still building this universe that we started. I mean, it is, like I feel blessed to be part of it. But there is obviously like a little bit of like, like, damn it, man, it's our movie, man. Like, we should be the ones doing this and that. And also, like now there's talk of like a TV show and this and that. And so, we always feel like, we were the original, parents of this movie. And, it feels very strange to give it to other people. You know what I mean? Even though, like, I think Adam and Simon, the guys who did the 2016 version, like I couldn't have chosen, better filmmakers to make Blair Witch, because I knew that they respected the movie and they really thought highly of it, so I knew they weren't going to screw it up, at least the way I felt about it. So, but yeah, man, I mean, absolutely. Like, I think all filmmakers, once they sell their movie, there is a certain amount of like, I mean, for me, it's not really bitterness, but there is a certain kind of pain as to like, all right, that should have been, that should be me, you know what I mean? But that's just not the way it works.
Is the Blair Witch project something that you've creatively kind of put to bed yourself? Or if the opportunity came, would you guys want to make one of those kind of ideas or films that you had all those years ago, like these days? Or is it something you just kind of like, we did that?
No, I mean, look, like, honestly, I just, it's funny. I just got off a call with Lionsgate like right before this podcast, just talking, kind of updating. They were updating me on what's going on the television side. So I feel, and and I went to Montreal last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago to do some videos for the video game release. Like I still, I think, and that Dan feels the same way, and I know Greg feels the same way. Like, we still would love to play in this playground. We really would. I mean, we're busy doing other things, fortunately.
And you have like 6 projects lined up from looking at
MTV. Portal sounds great.
But we always love doing the show or doing the movie or whatever it is. I'm here to help. I'm here to whatever you guys need, whether you guys, whatever. And Lionsgate has been pretty cool. I mean, they have involved us in stuff that they really don't need to legally involve us in. And then Greg and I, a few years ago, we actually actively went out and pitched a Blair Witch TV show. So we definitely would love to go back into that world. It's just, it's, for us, it's just kind of like, what's the right project, and and then kind of like figuring out what they want us to do, because right now, they're looking for other voices, for other creative teams to kind of lead it, and that's fine. I mean, that's kind of their prerogative. But I would always love to be involved in one way or another with Blair Witch. I mean, there's definitely some stories that are still left to be told.
So what is going on with the TV show?
I can't say anything. I wish I could, but I can't say anything.
Nice try, Mike.
I mean, the Blair Witch TV show has been kind of rumored for years now. But and there's a couple of concrete things that I could say, but it's still not 100%. So I can't say anything, but hopefully something happens, because I think that there's still I think people would dig a show like we came up with a show idea with artists with Lionsgate that I thought the fans would have loved, and we also wrote years ago, we wrote a sequel to the Blair Witch with Lionsgate that, again, I thought was really well done, and unfortunately it was a little higher budget than they were willing to commit to, but yeah, man, I mean, I still feel like there's I still definitely have creative energy to give to Blair Witch if I ever get the chance to do it.
It's such a fertile playground. It does feel like Book of Shadows torpedoed a lot of what could have happened, and we're kind of touching upon that in our show we're recording now. Without bad mouthing anyone, it just feels like that torpedo.
I mean, look, man, the Book of Shadows thing was also, I think a lot of it was our fault as well. I mean, like, we came out of Blair Witch. I mean, for sure, Artisan was like definitely kind of put the pedal to the metal and was like going way too fast. And like you were saying, like, I think if they would have slowed down a little bit, I think we would have made the next Blair Witch movie, for sure. But because they were like, hey, we want to do a sequel, we want you guys to do it, and we were kind of like, well, we don't want to do another horror movie right now. We're like horror movied out. Like Blair Witch is such a dark place to go for so many years, and we want to do this comedy that we've been trying to do, and they were like, all right, you guys can do the comedy, and then we'll go and do the Blair Witch. You guys can be executive producers, and we were like, that's great. So they hired some writers, and but I mean, if we, if the situation were different, we should have just said, no, we're going to get right onto this. We're going to get right onto it. And we're going to do, we would have done the prequel. We would have done the Ellie Kedward story.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it was, but the last kind of straw was that, once they said, hey, we'd like you to do the prequel, because they wanted us to do a sequel. They were like, no, the prequel is not going to work. And I'm like, we want to do a prequel. We want to do something different. We don't want to do like a,
we don't want more shaky footage, more.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, exactly. We don't want to stay away from found footage. We don't want to do. We want to do something completely different, And finally, they tested the idea, and they were like, we think a prequel would be a good idea. We tested it, and it tested really positively, and we want you guys to do it. But the thing is that we need to release it in next October. This is like December. And they were like, so we're like, so you want us to write and direct and cast and edit and a movie and have it released in 10 months?
And it's a period piece. Not only that.
And it's in the winter, so we're gonna have to go somewhere that has snow, like in early spring. You know what I mean? And we were like, no. And also, I mean, also a problem we had is that we had made, a pretty good amount of money, so monetarily we weren't like desperate like a lot of other filmmakers that sell their first film and they'll get, they'll make any money and they're like, I gotta pay the bills. We had more money than we had ever had before, so there was no financial incentive. And to me, like, and also, I mean, there's fear. You know what I mean? Like I think Dan and I definitely had this spotlight on us, and we knew that we were gonna have to make another movie eventually, and that was a lot of pressure, man. It's really, I mean, you imagine like, following up Blair Witch Project. That's a tough thing to do, Is
that did you say that fear, or that maybe being a little gun shy is maybe the main reason why there's such a break between Blair Witch and Altered and then Lovely Molly?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I think that what I, like looking back on it, I think I should have taken some time off and then gone, just dealt with my family stuff and then come back, but we kind of kept working and kind of half-assed working, but yeah, man, I mean, there was definitely a fear of just, failing, and a fear of like people, realizing that we weren't like geniuses, and all the stuff kind of comes with a with a sophomore movie. You know what I mean? But I think, and again, like back to the horror thing. Like, at least I know Dan probably the same way. Like, we never consider ourselves horror filmmakers, so it wasn't like we had like 10 scripts ready to go of horror movies that we've been wanting to make for, since we were kids. There wasn't a backlog of horror movies. There wasn't, so for us to kind of, like for me, I wanted to feel comfortable, and I wanted to feel like truly, I wanted to make a movie for the right reasons.
Yeah, definitely.
And we had a lot of opportunities to make like, bigger Hollywood movies, and that we turned down. That I think was probably a good decision at that time. But yeah, I mean, dude, I was like, 30 years old. And it was, I never imagined that I was going to have that kind of success that quickly, And
it's a lot to take in at any age.
It was overwhelming, man. It was overwhelming.
Right. I mean, even if you had like 10 movies under your belt before something like the Blair Witch Project hits, who could be ready for that level of success so quickly? That's a hard thing. It's never like the only other because before Blair Witch, there was like, El Mariachi and, Clerks and, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, these, these indie movies that had made a little bit of money. But I mean, never had it. I mean, if somebody would have said, hey, your movie's going to make $140 million domestic, we would have been like, are you freaking out of your mind? Even 10 million was like, oh my God, if we make 10 million, imagine that. So, the only other person that I can compare that to is Oren Peli, who did Paranormal Activity kind of out of nowhere, and it had this huge success. And he's retired now. I mean, like he, just like it's hard to come back after a movie that's successful. I mean,
I actually went to a dinner party at his house a couple years ago, and he was just like in his sweats talking about like designing an app at this point. It's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, he's like, I mean, I've hung out with him a little bit. I mean, he's a great guy, and he gives all the credit in the world to Blair Witch, and I love his movie. I think it's one of the like paranormal, like the first one I think is, one of the best conflict movies ever. But just, it's funny, like, what he did afterwards, he got gun shy, you know what I mean? I think that's, you got to, but also he made, he got attached to Insidious, and, and the Paranormal Activity made so much money on the sequels and stuff. So for him, there wasn't, there wasn't a monetary reason to go out and make films. And he just felt like, I'm kind of done with this now. And I've tried to get him, like, I've tried to, like, seduce him. Like, I'm like, dude, man, let's do an anthology. You just do, like, a little 15-minute movie. Come on, man. And he's like, hell no, dude. I'm not.
So he's doing the George Costanza. Yeah, like George Costanza, leave on a high note type of thing. Like, just, I'm out. So.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, he's a smart guy, and he lives in New Zealand now. So he's completely abandoned the LA thing, which is, I think I've tried to stay away as far from LA as possible, you know what I mean? Because I'm afraid of, like, what it'll do to me, you know what I mean? I don't blame him for anything that he's done, but it's difficult to come back after, like, such a crazy success, like, kind of out of nowhere success,
Well, Eduardo, thank you so much for your time. I know you're still active with Queens of the South on the USA Network, right?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of television, and my partner Greg and I are about to pitch a show with Sam Raimi. So we are that's our big thing right now, is trying to get a TV show going, and I think we're getting close. We're getting very close. So that's our big thing.
And is Portals completed?
Portals is completed. It's coming out, I think,
next month, right?
Yeah, it's coming out soon, and that was a great thing, because I thought that movie was going to be lost. They just had a lot of production problems, and so luckily they put it together, and they're going to release it. It's a good film. It's a good anthology, man. It's a cool little science fiction anthology. So excellent.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been a thrill for me. I mean, like I said, you still owe me a pair of boxer shorts, man.
All right, well, I'll
all right. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys. And anytime you guys need, call me up. You guys know my email, so
I will take you up on that. Trust me.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Eduardo. Have an awesome day. Thank you.
All right.
All right. To you, our listeners, we hope you enjoyed that interview with Eduardo Sanchez. We hope you really enjoyed all of our coverage of the first Blair Witch Project movie. Again, we kind of talk about this a little bit more in future episodes, but I don't say this lightly. I think the Blair Witch Project is the most important movie of the past 20 years, just in terms of the opportunities it opened in filmmaking for other people, and a way to show studios that low budget, outside of the box horror, there's a real market for it, and that people really want it. So we were really happy to talk about it. So if you want to communicate with us, if you want to give us your thoughts and your feedback on any of the Blair Witch Project movies, the best way to do so is reach right out to us over in Twitter. We are at Pod and Pendulum over on Twitter, and we interact with everybody. If you prefer to put your thoughts in long form, drop us a note on email. We really haven't gotten too much email, and I think that's because we get so much Twitter at this point. But we are over at podandthependulum@gmail.com. We will definitely read, if we think it's worthy of reading your response on the air, and kind of give our own thoughts and feelings. Until next time, we return next week with Jenks from the Scream Addicts podcast. He is going to give us his thoughts on Book of Shadows. He knows he is in for quite a battle there, since Jerry and I have some very strong... Let's put it this way. This is the only movie coming up, Book of Shadows, that I think Jerry would rate lower than his thoughts on Jason Goes to Hell. So that maybe gives you a little bit of an idea of what you're in for next week, listeners. After that, our final film in our coverage on the Blair Witch series will be 2016's The Blair Witch. So both of those shows are actually recorded, and I just need to put them together, so we are good to go. Until next time, folks, Thank you once again for listening. We are out of here.